Yo, what is up, my friend? It is great to have you here. In today's video, I want to talk about something that is actually never really talked about when it comes to achieving goals in your life. And that is the fact that that can often be incredibly lonely. The first part of the video, I want to run through 3 of the most common ways that this loneliness can materialize, before following it up with the second part, in where I'll share some tools and systems that you can use to combat that loneliness, helping you make your dream life a reality. If you're new here, my name is Shane, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I love creating tools and systems to help people make their ideal life a reality. But with all that said and done, let's get into today's video. When you first decide to make any significant change in your life, oftentimes that will mean leaving behind habits or systems or even people that have meant a lot to you in the past. Sometimes that's just because achieving your goals requires a level of dedication and time which just takes you away from being able to spend it with the people you care about. But other times it's because you realize that those habits and systems just don't serve you anymore and are actually getting in the way of you making this goal a reality. Ultimately, it ends up resulting in this incredibly common feeling of being isolated, of being on your own. Because not only are you dealing with these new challenges that you're not really sure how to navigate, but you're also doing them from a position of not having the usual support structures that you have had in the past. And unfortunately, it's this isolation that usually starts setting in the hardest when you need the support the most. One thing that I think is one of the biggest sadnesses in life is that most people will never achieve most of their goals. What makes it even sadder again is the fact that most people probably could achieve most, if not all, of these goals that they have, if they just weren't so afraid of breaking out of the status quo. If you're somebody who's looking to break out of that mold and actually create a life that is full of happiness, it's going to mean you're going to have to put yourself into situations which allow you to build up this non-standard set of experiences. And by doing that, you're actually making it more difficult to form close-knit relationships with people, because more often than not, the strongest relationships we have are ones that are built through shared experiences. And so if these experiences that you're putting yourself into position to actually get the knowledge from are ones that most people aren't doing, you're naturally going to feel a little bit more isolated than those around you. If you're looking to make a new goal a reality and instill some change in your life, chances are that's going to require you to sacrifice some of your free time. Free time which is probably at the moment spent building connections with others and developing relationships and hanging out with friends. And so if you don't have as much free time to do that anymore, it's naturally going to strain those relationships with the people who are around you. In those situations, if those people who you hang around with the most don't really understand why you're pushing so hard and don't understand where your ambitions are coming from or what you're ultimately aiming for, that can mean that the times when you are together become more strained, because the conversation turns to why you're not around anymore and how it's been so long since they've seen you and they're wondering when they're going to get to see you next. These are all common challenges that I see happening quite regularly, and more often than not, they're coming from a good place. These people we care about miss us, they want to see more of us, and they just want to know what's going on in our lives. But that doesn't make the feeling of loneliness that can come with that any more easy to deal with. And it's just important to know that that is probably something that's going to happen as you sacrifice this free time to make that life of yours a reality. Okay, so if they're the 3 most common ways that loneliness can materialize, what can you actually do to combat that? The first thing you can do is, instead of trying to keep all of your relationships ticking over and just doing the bare minimum to keep in contact with all these people, is instead to focus on just a few core friendships and relationships within your life. Really make these relationships super strong and form really tight bonds and connections with those people so they truly understand why you're making the sacrifices you're making and how they can help support you in this journey. The other added benefit that this has is, by having fewer relationships, it actually just requires less time to really nurture and develop them. If you've got 100 people who you need to keep in touch with and you've only got 4 hours in a week, well, that is going to be spread incredibly thin. Whereas if you have 4 hours to form relationships with 1 or 2 or 3 people, well, that could be going out for dinner or going for coffee and really getting deliberate and focused on maintaining those relationships and keeping them super strong. You've still got the same amount of time, but by focusing on fewer people, you can make sure that that support structure is there and is being ongoingly developed as time moves on, and not just kept in a steady state kind of maintenance kind of a position, which can often cause strain in relationships if that's trying to be done over too long of a period of time. Ultimately, what this will end up resulting in is that you've got a small core group of friends who not only know you better, but have a better understanding of what level of sacrifice is required and how they support, and also able to tell you what they need from you to make sure that they're getting enough out of the relationship to make it worthwhile for them too. All in all, everybody wins, and yes, sometimes it can be sad to not maintain closer relationships with these other people who we do care about, but it means that we're not completely on our own. We have a few core people who we can reach out to when times really get tough and we're feeling that loneliness when things get hard. And so, all in all, while it might not be ideal and it might not be the perfect solution that we're looking for, it is the best one to help us achieve our goals and keep moving forward for the long term. The second thing that you can do to combat this loneliness is actually to become a better communicator. The more able you are to get across the reasons why you're putting yourself through this sacrifice and why these goals are important to you, the quicker somebody is going to be able to understand. And the more they're able to understand, the better able they're going to be able to provide support and also be able to provide help to help you as you go through these barriers and problems and setbacks that will ultimately come your way. Not only that, but if you're effectively able to get across why this sacrifice is worth it and what the goals that you're trying to achieve are, you may actually end up in a position where you're inspiring others to do the same. Inspiring others to take that first step that you've already taken by showing them that it's not that scary and that with the right people around you, it can actually be very, very manageable. But the only way you're going to achieve that is by working on those communication skills and getting better at getting your points across as to why the sacrifice is worth it and why you need the support. The last way to combat this loneliness is to recognize the difference between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is actually a really important part of making our goals a reality. We've all had that moment where we're out for a walk, just in our own head, and we get this brainwave or breakthrough that just pops into our head out of nowhere. And that is the absolute benefit of solitude, of being alone. And so it's important to recognize that loneliness and solitude are different and both have their place. Obviously, loneliness is something that we want to tackle and it's a negative emotion that we want to make sure we're combating. But let's not get that solitude mixed up. One thing to keep in mind though is that no matter what you do, you're going to be dealing with some level of pain. On one hand, you've got this pain of loneliness, which when you don't have the tools and systems to actually deal with, can be incredibly isolating, and it's definitely a negative emotion that you want to deal with. But it is something that can be overcome, and with the right time and the right tools, you will develop systems that help it become manageable and hopefully not a problem at all. On the other hand though, if it's a case of that this loneliness becomes something that you just can't handle and you decide, I'm going to give up my goals, go back to my old ways and forget about this feeling of being lonely. That's fine, and yes, in that situation you might not be feeling lonely anymore, but now instead of that loneliness pain you're feeling, you just feel empty. You know there's something there that you want to do, you know that you've tried and given up, and you know that if you don't change the way you're going to do things, it's never going to happen. And that pain, I feel, is even worse than the feeling of isolation, the feeling of loneliness, because this one can be solved, but this one can't unless you're going to take action. And so it's important to always keep in mind that all you're doing is you're not choosing between whether you want to feel the pain of loneliness or not. Instead, you're choosing what pain you want to feel. And I will always pick the pain that allows me to make my goals a reality and improve my overall level of happiness, even if right now it doesn't feel like that's what I'm doing. But it's important to never forget we are not choosing to remove pain, we're picking the pain that allows us to make our goals a reality. That's this week's video, folks. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of it, and if you liked this one, you may also love this one, which is about being honest with ourselves. But with all that said and done, that's this week's video. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you in the next one. Peace.